What up, it's VenomousStare, the Josh Hamilton of StarCraft 2, bringing you Game 2 of Hero vs Stephano, a Protoss vs Zerg matchup that caught my attention in this Katowice replay pack, because I liked both of the players so much. Stephano, the French Zerg, is incredibly talented. In Wings of Liberty, he was considered the best foreigner. Idra was the best foreigner at the beginning of the game's life, and about midway through 2011, not 2010, 2011, the year the Rangers lost the World Series in 7 games, not 5. Idra sort of didn't really do all that well in tournaments, and Stephano was winning everything and beating the Koreans, and he really developed a lot of his success around heavy roach play, especially against Protoss in the beginning. And you really have to consider that Protoss was considered favored versus Zerg at that time. In 2010 and 2011, Zerg was the worst race. And in many ways, that sort of developed the skill of the players, because Zerg players were forced to adapt and deal with more ridiculous situations. And we saw the development of Terran players in the extremely early days of StarCraft 2 delayed because cheese play was so effective. And players like Jinro, the Swedish Terran, who has been retired for many years, continuously tried to hone their macro ability and fix their inability to macro as a race as Terran players, because when you play on maps like Steppes of War, and close positions Metalopolis, and close positions Lost Temple, Backwater Gulch, it is very easy to go for extremely aggressive builds and beat your opponent, especially if they're Zerg, because Zerg, of course, the Overlords were way slower back then. The Queen was a laughingstock compared to what it is now. I mean, the Queen now, it was what, like 11 air range, 9 air range? It's just insane. In many ways, Blizzard was like, well, we invented the Range Liberator, and so now we have to design all the maps where there's no space behind the air of the natural, or no space right here where the Liberator can just siege up out of range. And anyway, the maps got bigger, Terran players learned to macro, but Zerg players were always pressured by Terran players in a way, as we see an Adept coming out here for Hero. He wants to scout around and see what Stephano's doing. Remember, Hero gets vision with that shade, even after they nerfed the amount of vision. Before, it offered as much vision as like the Adept itself. It was ridiculous. You think the hallucinated Phoenix is good for scouting, or the Observer? No, man. Before the nerf, the Adept was just ludicrous for scouting. So Stephano was pretty much the best Zerg in Wings of Liberty, and he was one of the most winning players for a really long time. And what was funny is, back then Zerg players really had a lot of trouble with Protoss around 2011, because in 2010, as I was saying before, Terran players had a huge advantage with the cheese builds they could do because of the map pool, and you see this, destructible rocks, unbuildable rocks. This is because back in the day, Terran players could make 2 bunkers at the base of your ramp and hardwall you in as Zerg. And you might be saying, oh, you seem really Zerg biased, why are you talking about this? Because Stephano sprung from a time period where Zerg really wasn't doing well, and he innovated in how Zerg won against people who were top tier and winning a lot of things, including GSLs like MC. And he was an innovator who actually changed the metagame and pioneered the Ling Infestor style. Charge coming down, Observer has been made. Warp Prism is out here. Hero's going to go for some Immortal harassment with Adepts. I like to do some Sentries if I use an Immortal, but it's sort of gimmicky. I think Adept is actually the better option for picking off workers. But if you want to go for sort of a cutesy play, you can make Sentries, show your Warp Prism with a main drop, and force field the ramp. And believe me, I'm not missing anything over here, don't worry. As Charge comes out and more gates come, I really worry for Stephano. DT Shrine is on the way. Now, Spore Crawler's already out because Zerg players have sort of realized, okay, spores aren't that expensive. I should just freaking build them. I lose so many games not making spores, I'll just make a damn spore. I learned that lesson. And as Hero makes Zealots, Stephano might be learning a lesson about Protoss all-ins. Is the man who was so famous for holding off aggressive Protoss players and really made a name for himself with his ZVP might actually lose to a pretty vicious all-in. No third base out here for Hero. Hero, of course, has exceptional micro, especially when it comes to these all-in situations. Notice Stephano is just now getting roaches. He's choosing to engage with the queens. A very common tactic for Zergs is to try to focus the Warp Prism, and if you don't succeed when you do that and you lose your initial queens, it's insanely hard to hold, because Stephano just isn't going to have the larva to hold a push like this. Remember, these are speed zealots, and does Stephano have roach speed? No, he doesn't, so he can't even really count because, as the great Greg Idrifields once said, slow roaches really are god-awful units. And I don't even think he originally said slow roaches, I think he just said roaches. But we'll amend the quote because now they can turn into Ravagers. No time for that though, as the DTs do hit. And this is a classic Hero build. Notice he doesn't take his 3rd and 4th gas. The DTs come in and ravage Stephano, and even though he made 3 Spore Crawlers, it's not going to matter. And Stephano is going to stay in a bit longer than he would normally. He's going to try a little bit of hold position micro here. This is a tournament, so you do expect to see players sort of stay in even when the game is over, because they don't want to, well, I guess pull an Idra. I've already talked about him, right? So I might as well mention him again if it's the best example. Hero takes the 2-0. This was a best of 3. Subscribe, like, comment. Leave me a comment. Let me know you like StarCraft.